Hey y'all, this is Flobo Boyce, and you are tuned into, clicked on another episode of Flobo Start on Netflix. Basically, this show is about me, just hitting up Netflix, seeing what's hot, seeing what's not, and giving you my reviews and after show for shows that need after shows. Now, before I begin, I just want to say if you haven't already, make sure you check out my website over at flobito.com. That's FLOBITO.com. And if you have time to support the homie, with a t shirt or mug or sticker, make sure you check out flobito.threadless.com. That's FLOBITO.threadless.com. Now, I was perusing Netflix and something caught my eye. Because I don't know if you guys know this now, the new apps or on my Xbox or even mobile, they have a list of trending top 10 movies. Project Power. It tends to be the August movie of the month, the flavor of the week, if you will. And even though this show is going to look at more obscure things and more like other like deep cuts in the Netflix library, I really want to tackle this one for a lot of reasons. Because at one point, and I'll get to that a little bit later, it featured A-list actors. It had Jamie Foxx in the trailer. It had Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the trailer. I was like, I want to know what this is about. And the idea of this pill was very intriguing. Before I go into a deep dive, I just got to say that this may include some spoilers. If you haven't seen Project Power, you probably should. So just to give you a little bit of a backstory, the runtime is about an hour and 53 minutes. It's really cool. Hour 53 kind of runs a little bit quicker than that. And this film is squarely in that Saturday afternoon B movie. I was actually perusing Facebook, and some people have written it off as a summer popcorn movie. I don't think that's quite the fact. I love summer popcorn movies. Like the next person, the Fast and Furious franchise is one of my favorite franchises of all time. Six Underground, another Netflix film, I would say, is a summer popcorn movie. This is totally what I appreciate about this as well. It almost seems like it's from a bygone era. This mid-budget, low to mid-budget action film with some CGI effects to give it some spectacle, but nothing on the scale of Avengers or a movie involving machines like Pacific Rim. Like this was totally made for something. I don't know how much the budget was, but if I have to assume somewhere between 15 and 40 million, only because you had like the actors in there. And those are the movies that we were lamenting weren't going to survive with studios being less risk averse. Either it will be micro budget films for new independent writers and directors, or the giant tent poles because they can guarantee money. And before I get into the nitty gritty about Project Power, I just want to thank Netflix, man. They really are presenting a lane for directors who may not be given the ball to handle a Marvel film, or writers may have a high concept, which probably would have their scripts left in turnaround with these bigger studios, with a library, with a content direction and vision, just looking to say, hey, look, let's see what sticks. Let's make a Bird Box. Let's make a Project Power. So the idea is this: there is a pill that was derived from other sort of military testing, that if you take it, you will get powers for a limited time. Whatever powers they are, they're pretty much left undefined. Everyone adheres to the pill a little bit differently, which is cool because it opens up the universe for sequels and spin-offs and all that. And you can OD on it too. So you don't pop the pill, you become Superman and things can bounce off of you and you're fine. If you take a hit or a blow, you will bruise because you are a human being. But there is also an instance that you can take too many pills at once and possibly like perish. So that kind of brings a little bit of a stakes into it. A couple years ago, I wrote a short screenplay with a similar premise. It was called Interrobang. Instead of it just being a random animal deprived super enhancer serum, like in this film, it was more like synthetic adrenaline. And so it was kind of cool, even though I'm not going to say they stole the idea from me because the idea is a high concept, but very, very like basic, especially now in the post superhero genre. But it was kind of cool to see how another team did a spin on the idea of what would happen if you can pop a pill and be granted superpowers. The movie was directed by Henry Jost and Rael Sherman. They kind of worked together. They were a tandem directing team. Overall thoughts, I loved it. I was trying to debate on whether I should have a scale or a rating system, and I kind of do. It's a 10-point scale with a decimal. But I really feel like at the end of a movie, there's that thing that Netflix tells you: do you give it thumbs up or thumbs down? And I'll give it thumbs up. Is it Citizen Kane? No. Is it the best written film or the best directed film or the best edited film? Not by a long shot, but there is a kind of a thrill ride in this premise about this magical pill or the scientifically synthetic synthesized pill and the shady government projects or the third party contracting organizations that are harvesting DNA from individuals to make that happen. There's something cool about that. There's something very throwback to the 2000s, late 90s about that kind of premise. I kind of miss it. I kind of miss having the movie that tries to make you think, even though it is kind of mindless in that case. The middle brow, if you will. And I thought it was kind of interesting. So if you haven't seen it now, just go ahead and do it. For those of you who've watched it already, roll with me. So there are some ideas, this shadow organization named Telios, right? They are coming up with this serum, this kind of like formula to make like these super soldiers. And they derive it's not, the science isn't laid out, but it's understood that it is derived from animal DNA. That opens the door for other kind of animal combinations, strength of an elephant, viciousness of a lion or whatnot. And that was pretty cool too. They actually take from nature, which I really did appreciate. It's cheesy. This film is one of the most cheesiest things I've seen, but cheesy can be good. I mentioned the Fast and Furious franchise in the first two films, The Fast and the Furious, and Too Fast, Too Furious were cheesy. Not like overblown, wink to the camera, we know what we're doing cheesy. I mean, these characters were taking the roles as seriously as possible. And for us on the outside, it was kind of like, are you serious, bro? I actually wrote down in my notes the first scene when we see what is the stakes. We see the power pill. We see the people trying to do test trials, and someone saying, "Hey, look, I'm." Someone says, "Hey, look, I'm Newt." Almost unprovoked. Like there is this whole, I have to tag my name so everyone watching knows who I am. Is absolutely like it's cheesy. It's one of the things that we wrote in the first draft. Your workshop professor would say, find a more clever way to not dump exposition on all of us, right? I also want to say, I feel like New Orleans, for one reason or another, either writers are inspired about the city and its culture, or a cynical person can say the film incentives to shoot in New Orleans has like opened up the door to these crops of films that take place in the Crescent City. So it's funny, like movies like Black and Blue or Bad Lieutenant, Protocol, New Orleans, you get, or even that TV show on Fox named Caveville, you're seeing more and more about the city post the storm and how it operates as a culture, that deep south, humid, swampy, and it has a nice little layer of color to everything. We see also, from a writing standpoint, There's a bit of like a throwback to other cop films. Like Joseph Gordon-Levitt has this like reoccurring theme, Frank, his character, about being Dirty Harry. The first time we see him, he hops off a motorcycle and he's interrogating or challenging these criminals in the alleyway. And you're like, huh, that's kind of very sudden impact. And then later on, it pays off in the third act where he does the whole like, gun to the face or do what I say because I'm gonna bring the rain of God upon you, which is pretty cool. If you're a fan of the classic crime films, or even when Major or Art's character, when he sees Newt and Newt asks him, "Are you alone?" and he goes, "Aren't we all?" Totally a throwback to a crime film from the 70s called Chinatown by Roman Polanski. It's one of the films that I saw a couple times when I was in film school. Not my favorite crime film, but definitely one of the classics. So it was kind of cool to see the writers pay homage to that, even though it was kind of clumsy of it all. And there's a lot of things in there that could be written off as cliche. The final scene taking place in a shipping yard was kind of the thing you're like, we've seen this before. Or the established Frank's character, the cop, who is like the conscience of the New Orleans Police Department, but he has enough edge to be plain clothes and wear a Saints jersey through most of it, trying to apprehend a criminal who tries to rob a bank has been done. I mean, robbing a bank is the most basic thing a criminal can do in comic books or in movies or in TV shows. But it's kind of cool to see, okay, here is how we're going to subvert that. So in that same bank robbery scene, I was already rolling my eyes. But what was cool was that the perpetrator was someone that was invisible. But then, on this trolley, when they opened up the dye packs and being like bombarded with the dye pack color on the money, on the counterfeit money, seeing the colors on the invisible person, that they're not no longer invisible. I thought it was kind of a cool twist to say, hey, look, these guys are just normal, everyday criminals. And someone without any imagination, they said, hey, if I was invisible, I would rob a bank. So it kind of paid off in the back end. And it was cool to see how Frank, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, is able to like use his enhancements for good, even though using the pill is considered not above board. And there is a little bit of that. I wish there was more. I would love to see how many people are familiar with it, not just the people dealing it, but like, is New Orleans as a whole familiar with this Project Power thing? If they're not familiar, if it is test trials, as they mentioned, I wonder why New Orleans was picked as a city. That's something they could really explore in future films, if there's sequels, if there's spin-offs, if there's like a 2.0 version of this, if there's an extended release, if there's ways they can tailor intellectual aspects to it, like the movie and TV show Limitless. I would love to see that as well. And the thing is, too, what I really liked about this film is the performances. On paper, this idea of like this super serum seems beneath actors like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and beneath Jamie Foxx. I mean, Jamie Foxx is an Oscar winner, for crying out loud. I mean, for Ray and Miami Vice and all those other ones, Dreamgirls. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Christopher Nolan's right-hand man. Was an Inception. This is back to the power of Netflix, man. I mean, if this was a theatrically released movie at this budget, it would probably be dumped in like November or February, and I'm sure plenty of actors would have walked away from this. But if you're Netflix, you can say, look, yeah, it's a low budget film, but I can guarantee you 1, 2, 5 million views in a month, and we'll pay you the money because we have a huge content budget. What I'm saying is that the performances here are top notch. Robin too. I mean, the performances here are top notch. And the only thing that detracts from the entire experience is the editing. There are some really critical editing things I was not a fan of that really draws you out the movie sometimes. Things are either jumpy cut or story beats. Like the whole storyline with Art or Major trying to free his daughter, which is really the emotional through line, the heart of the film. That, yeah, it's cool to have superpowers, but we have to really come to grips with how does that affect families? How does that affect people and the people they love? This should be what the film should be built around because there's a family dynamic between Robin and her mom as well. Because Robin's mom is ill, and Robin's trying to do right by her by getting her the soup. But before we get on the quest to rescue Art's daughter, we only see her in glimpses twice in cutscenes that are supposed to reinforce Art's struggle, but they kind of come across as shoehorned. So you kind of are pulled out when you say, oh, it isn't just the daughter that's distant. The daughter is actually in this movie and she is someone to be saved. Kind of kills the vibe, at least for me. I feel like they could have been done. A lot of the action sequences are kind of erratic. You don't really hit home. You don't really get the vibe you want. The satisfaction of taking a thug down or shooting a guy in the chest with a shotgun. She'd be like, yeah, other than being like, well, okay, I guess that's cool, But it's not to distract, but detract of the whole look of the film. It's still a treat. It's still a treat to see these actors who are in bigger movies doing this. It's still a treat to see new actors being broken, and it's a high premise. It's something you can talk about with your friends. Definitely something you can say, imagine if that happened to you. What would you do? What would you do if you took a pill and you felt like you had superpowers just for a little while, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, So, like, that's the fun factor. So I'm not going to poo-poo on it. I'm not going to be like, oh, the editing is choppy and the cinematography is flat. Therefore, you shouldn't see it. And I fold my arms. I'm saying is that separates this movie from being a good way to kill 2 hours to being, you know what? Dang it, Netflix, I want to see more of this. I want to see part 2 and part 3. I'm just saying, I recommend it. Project Power, if I have to give it a rating, 6.8 out of 10.0. That's right, 6.8 out of 10.0. Worth viewing, worth watching. Definitely not going to knock your socks off. Definitely not going to change the world with everything in it. This has been Flobo Saw It on Netflix. This show, early access. It's exclusively for Patreon subscribers. Yo, support the show, support the homie, become a member of the boisterous crew at patreon.com/Flobo Boyce. If you're watching on Netflix, you're getting it a little bit delayed. You're getting it a couple days after people on Patreon. So do yourself a favor, log on, support, donate, be a part of the crew. Once again, at patreon.com/Flobo Boyce. This is Flobo Saw It on Netflix, my guide to the Red and Black movie and TV show attack. I'll be back next time. And until then, you know the deal. Be yourself and peace out.